Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael Parker. This is Beyond the Thank You, where we have real stories, real conversations about real experiences with today's veterans. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Thank You, where we go a little bit deeper than the surface level conversations with our truly honored veterans. Today, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Darryl Leonard here. Darryl, welcome to Beyond the Thank You.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, the pleasure is mine, sir. So, Darryl, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but I wrote a book. It's called I'm sorry. It's called Don't Thank Me for My Service, Allow Me to Explain. So that title of that book is kind of catchy. It grabs your attention depending how you receive it. I'm sure you've experienced that over time. Somebody's told you thank you for your service. Tell us a little bit about you. Who is Darryl Leonard?
Well, that's could be pretty complicated, but Darryl Leonard is a man that was born in a little town called Violet, Louisiana. But I always tell people I'm from New Orleans because of the fact, if I said where I really was from, most people, unless you're from there, wouldn't know who it was. So I graduated from Loyola University, got my bachelor's in 1984, piddled around in broadcast journalism and piddled around for a minute, but it never materialized the way I hoped it did. And then an opportunity came, and I saw a video about the Army, even though the Navy tried to get me first. And the Army showed me this video, and I told them what I wanted to do, and I met the criteria to get it. And I said I would only go to be a broadcaster. So I went in with the Stripes for Skills back in 1985, January 4th. They sent me to Fort Dix, New Jersey. I froze up there because coming from the South, it was really cold, but it was cool because I knew it was all about being in a game of some sort. So going into the military, I kind of figured it out early on, and that's how I got started. I did about 5 overseas tours during my 21 years. Germany, Korea, Panama, loved all of them. And did a couple of assignments in the States in between. And then I retired in 2006.
Okay. So, man, you had a different career than most service members that we have, contact with. So you were in broadcasting. So I finally get to talk to a famous person. That's amazing.
I don't know. I started off, my first assignment was the 3rd Armored Division out of Frankfurt.
Okay.
So I got a quick dose of reality because I never forget when I got off the plane and they kept us at the replacement center at Rhine Mine for a couple of days. And when they put us on a bus and they took us to Frankfurt, I remember being in the replacement detachment and just thinking, where am I? Because I'm thinking I'm going to AFN to work at the television and radio station, but that wasn't the case. So
wow,
I'll never
okay.
forget, a crusty old E8 walked in, and when he saw who I was, all he said was, grab your stuff. And then I put on the duffel bag, and we walked right to a building right across the street. And I'm thinking, I said, this is a strange place for a TV station, but it actually, and he said, this is not the TV station, son. This is the third armored division. Now, immediately I'm trying to figure out the armored division. And I'm, brand new, had no idea what it was, but I quickly learned that I would be working in the public affairs office.
Okay.
And I said, man, I'm a broadcaster. I talk. I don't write print, but that's what they try to get me to do. So I had to try to come up with a niche immediately. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have stayed the whole time in the military, in the Army, if I had to do public affairs type print work.
Uh-huh.
But fortunately, things worked out in my favor, and I was able to get me a camera and start making it do what it do for the unit. And that was like the jump off point for my career.
That's awesome. So you say you served 21 years, correct?
Roger that.
21 years in broadcasting. So the book is more related to transitioning from being a service member to actually being a civilian. But the broadcasting realm for you is the same regardless. Is that not the case? Or how would you receive that?
I took it as an honor because I knew I had a responsibility based on what my job was. Morale plays a big part in anything.
Okay.
And I figured how I could tie in and make soldiers and all of the people we were there to serve their lives better was to do my part, because my part as a broadcaster was very small. My job was to try to bring America to as many of them as possible so they didn't feel so bad. So I still got to go out and cover combat arms, supply, and all the different jobs that the military encompassed by telling their stories. So
Right.
this way, it didn't, because everybody in America, well, I know a lot of my family thought, you hear the Army, everybody just thinks of the infantry or the artillery or the armor. They don't understand how many different jobs there are.
Right.
And my job, when people would hear about what I did, they said, "Oh, you AFN." They didn't equate it the same way, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
But our jobs were as important as everyone else, because if we didn't go out and tell their stories, no one would ever know about it.
True. True.
They would be dumbfounded by thinking that the military had all these different types of jobs. And so that was the one thing I always kept in my playbook and remembered about what I was there to do. And that's why I think I was successful and I enjoyed it, because of going and talk like we're talking now. I
Right.
got to go out to the field. Granted, I wasn't out there for months at a time, but I go out there and meet different soldiers and try to just expand and let people know what they were doing, but storytelling through my videos or my radio interviews.
Okay. So now we've covered the military part of your story. How was your transition from active duty, being a broadcaster, to now becoming civilian, Mr. Darryl Leonard? How was that?
It's difficult for me because it's how I program my mind. Because once
Okay.
I knew I was on my way out, and fortunately, I got picked up by the Houston Recruiting Battalion. As a civilian, I became the APNA, which is the Advertising and Public Affairs Officer. So
Okay.
I was still working with soldiers, but just in a different capacity. Now, as a civilian, I had to try to understand how they correlated and worked together. Even though in my career I did work with a lot of civilians, but now being a civilian, I still try to look at what I was doing from the lens of being a soldier, and I try to just give them my best and do my best for them by putting them in position to be successful. Because out in recruiting, you had a lot of soldiers that didn't want to be there. You know,
Right.
a lot of them, you had the Iraq War going on, and it was a hard adjustment for a lot of them because they had to go from the high intensity environment in combat to a different type of combat, being out on the streets day to day, trying to talk other young people into following the path that they did by joining the military and representing the army. So it was, I could still see it, even though I was on the other side of it. And all I tried to do was just help make their jobs easier by putting them in position to go and just be successful.
So being that your career field was broadcasting and you went into the civilian world as a broadcaster, kind of, um, you are one of the different people that we've had the chance to talk to, because most veterans, combat veterans, aviation, we talked to an Air Force person yesterday. The difference of the translation from the military to civilian, man, that's a hard transition. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, I tell the story almost every time we get on here. The hardest question anybody ever asked me was, "What do I want to do?" And you know, for you, you just did what you did in the military. You just did it as a civilian. Um, but taking that into account, we also understand that there's a uncommon, unwritten rule, I'll say, an unwritten rule that when you become a civilian, nobody wants you to come in there with being a civilian. I mean, being a military. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever you were in the military, that's out the window. You know,
Right.
we want to know who Darryl is. You know, did you go through that type of transition when you went from military uniform to civilian?
No, because I I took the chart or the path I took to come into the military. Essentially, I went back out there because I went into the military with a the mindset of a civilian, but I knew it was like a game I had to play. You know, when I came in number one, I was older than a lot of my classmates that came in the military the same time I was. So maybe I was a little more mature, and I've been out in the world a little bit longer, so I understood, and it wasn't as difficult for me because a lot of cats, man, when they come in, it is very hard for them to try to make that adjustment because in basic training they had to break us down.
Right.
They put in, the beauty of it was you're working with people from all different walks of life to try to form a team. And because I saw that early on, it wasn't as difficult for me. So when I retired, I already knew more or less what it would be like in the civilian world, but trying to work for the government again in as a civilian officer was a little more difficult because I still had a staff, but trying to figure out the way they did things,
Uh-huh.
try to accomplish the mission, as it were, was just maybe the hardest thing for me, and it took me a while to kind of figure out how to do that. But once I did, I always my thing was I always need to have fun at whatever it is I'm doing. And in advertising and public affairs, seeing the success that these soldiers were having, because man, we've gone through periods of time where people didn't want to join,
Yeah.
and to try to still find people to enlist them in the military, that's difficult. But if you believe in what you're doing, it made it easier. And working with other civilians, I eventually figured it out, and I really enjoyed it. So the transition from being a soldier to a civilian wasn't as steep for me, but because maybe I tried to understand it a little bit different. And I think the nature of my job for 21 years allowed me to do that. And it was still somewhat in the career field that I had started.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, this is a whole different story.
Yeah.
Um, so now I want you to put your broadcasting hat on, and I
Mm-hmm.
want you to, we're gonna go a little bit deeper. Okay. We're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about what does it mean to you when people say thank you for your service? How do you how do you relate to that
You know,
conversation? Does it end? Does it end after they say it? Or does in your mind, does that conversation need to continue?
I think it needs to continue. It's crazy. I live in Texas, and this is the first place I ever heard them.
Oh,
You
wow.
know,
Okay.
yeah, I never heard "thank you for your service" until I got here. And in the Houston area, it's kind of say, oh yeah, they're pro-military, I think, for the most
Okay.
part. Not necessarily where I live, but people would say it to me all the time, and I only heard it out of uniform. And the
Okay.
way I
Right.
was exposed to it was uh, in the job I had, we would do events where we bring in recruiting assets to try to do things. I'll use like sports. I love
Okay.
sports. So part of one of the things I tapped into as the public affairs officer for the battalion was we worked the Texans, the Astros, the Rockets, all these different sporting events where I would put the soldiers out front and give them an opportunity, but I would be there with them a lot of times. And
Okay.
then hearing and seeing the passion and what folks would tell them, man, I really appreciate the service. They were telling it to them, but I would be there too. And then when they find out that I was ex-military or retired military, they'd tell it to me. And it would make me scratch my head sometime because I felt that I was just doing maybe what I was supposed to do. You know, when I
Explain that.
came in,
Explain that to me. What do you mean you were doing what you're supposed to do? Explain that to me.
yeah, when I graduated and when I was in college working at TV stations doing different things, that's all I thought I was going to do.
Right.
But then there came a time where I said, you know what, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and the military afforded me to be able to do it. So when I think of a soldier, I don't necessarily think of me as a broadcaster as being a soldier on the same level as the infantryman or the artilleryman or different folks because my job was so different. It was more to me civilianized as opposed to what I looked at as soldiering.
Okay. So
Soldiering,
let me interrupt for one second,
uh-huh.
if you don't mind. So this is where we go a little bit deeper. So you retiring or leaving the military as a first sergeant,
Hmm.
you don't have or you didn't have the opportunity to not play military as well. So how did you balance that civilian mindset along with that military? I'm still a E8.
Yes.
How did you balance that?
Um, Working with soldiers to me was an extension, even though I was a civilian. I'm still that way. I'm
Okay.
still in the military mindset by a lot of the things I do, even though I've been out the army for over 20 years, which is
Okay.
kind of crazy. I still say yes, sir, no, sir, to the folks. I still try to treat people the same with respect. I sometimes I still march around like I'm still in the military, or I just do things that I used to do in the army. When I talk to people, even whether it's on the phone or in person, I'll say Roger that and use some of the terminology that we used in the military. So in my mind, even though I've been out of uniform for a while, I still think I am. So I guess it's been ingrained in me, and I am a soldier. And people look at you differently too. I
Right.
referee basketball.
Uh-huh.
I salute the flag when we play the national anthem, and people will. That's when they'll tell me they'll say, "Oh, I didn't know you were in the military, but thank you for your service." So even in that arena, it's the sports arena. I'm still in the sports arena, but I'm actually out there, and I try to conduct myself in such a way to not bring. I look at it as bringing shame on the military. So in every aspect of my life there's parts of the army and the military in general still it's ingrained in me, and that's how I try to conduct myself, and I try to get people to see it, and sometimes it sways people to want to ask me about it and we talk about it. But then when they hear about what I did, it's mind-boggling to them because they had no idea those type of things took place.
So
And
when somebody would say thank you for your service to you, it's more relatable for them when you tell them what your job was.
yes, and I used to be a little uncomfortable with it because, like I said, when I think thank you for your service, no, I never deployed, number one. So I don't have that on my resume that I deployed to the Badlands. I just happened to be in during the Cold War era and now during the Iraq era. But I want to look at it. That was one thing I really wanted to go because then I said, I'm doing my part by being in one of these conflicts as opposed to always being in the rear or left behind, never having that opportunity. So I have the utmost respect for all my brothers and sisters that did it, and that's why I try to show it to them all the time. I'll even say that it seems a little weird for me telling them thank you for their service because I think we don't look at it as where we needed a thank you. I guess that's the best way to describe it. That was
Right.
our job, and that's the way I looked at the military. It's the outside, you're a radio television person. In the military, I was a radio television person, even though a lot of people didn't even realize the military had. So I um, kind of, it's cool, but it's just that maybe you would think the military would have been harder for the average person to deal with. But I guess I was fortunate to actually find a job in the military that was what I really wanted to do. Well, a lot of people,
Yeah.
I don't think everybody, maybe it's an MP or something, they can relate to because maybe they really wanted to be a local policeman. But now in the
Right.
military, they're doing the same thing. But if you're in one of these different type MOSs where it doesn't really translate to civilian life, I think it's a little different for them. Because
So
you're not
so
out
this
there, if you're in the infantry, what do you to try to compare something in the infantry to what you're doing on the outside? There's really not.
right, and that's what makes this conversation with you so much different than any conversation that I've had so far. Um, which is great because what this does is it broadens the mindset of anybody that comes across this interview that the military is so much more than just combat arms.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
my question for you is, regardless if you're in combat arms or you're in broadcasting inside of the military, the commitment that you made with the government when you enlisted in the military is the same. So when they say thank you for your service, does that mean that the commitment that you and the military made, regardless if you volunteered to do it or if it was something that drove you out of passion to do it or you were forced to do it, the bottom line is, do you feel that the United States as a whole, not the individual saying thank you for your service, has given you what you signed up for?
That's a good question. Number one, you once you sign up, you don't really have an idea because it'll be totally foreign to you until you actually get to experience it.
Okay, so let me chime in one more time. So the concept, and this is great that we're having this conversation because the concept to a civilian is, if you serve in the military, you're taken care of. If you serve in the military, you're provided for. If you serve in the military after you get out, especially if you're fortunate enough to be where we are and we were able to retire,
Right.
then you are taken care of for the rest of your life. That's the concept
Yes.
of a civilian person. So what I'm asking is, do you think that concept was fulfilled, or is that just a misnomer and civilians really don't have an understanding of what it is to be a service member,
I
regardless of
don't
what your
think,
MOS was.
yeah, I don't think they do, because that's why I think we should still educate them more, because a lot of people really don't have a clue. And that's what I mean when I say I tell them about all the different opportunities there are, but a lot of people are turned off because in their mind, when you talk military, they're only thinking about combat related stuff. But when you can break it down and have a deep conversation with them and say, no, the military has this, from everything from being a petroleum supply specialist, aka a fuel handler or whatever, to doctors, lawyers, broadcasters, whatever. We have the vast scope, the same things that you have out here, plus the opportunity to further your education if that's what you desire to do, to get degrees, to just do so many more things that the public, I don't think they really understand that. But I think in my case, they fulfilled what they were supposed to do. And I was fortunate enough, not many jobs you can just work 20 years and sit back and retire. And now the all you have to do is live, and you don't have to worry about getting paid. It's just sad when we see the homelessness from our brothers and sisters, which you run into them out there on the street or whatever, and they, whatever it was, kind of messed them up, that kind of caused them to be out there, where on our side, we're different, we're okay. um but I think the general public still have a narrow idea of what it is the military does, because what do they show on the news? The military during combat. We're over in Iran right now doing things, and that's what they see. So they don't understand what really goes into all of this. They only see the bombs being dropped or things of that nature. If they had an more of an understanding of what it is to be a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coast guardsman, then I think America would have a totally different perspective. And a lot of it has to fall on the shoulder of the leadership, because
Okay,
sometimes we fall
what
short.
leadership are you talking about? When you say leadership, are you talking about civilian or military?
I'm talking about the more civilian,
Okay.
because they don't have a problem with sending little Johnny or little Susie off the wall. Why? Because they're not doing it.
So let me throw a stat at you. I'm not. I know you say you like sports, so stats probably right down your line. This one's simple. Less than 1% of America's population serves in the military. So having contact and empathy for us is hard. It's hard for them to do that. And it's hard for us to have us as the veterans. It's hard for us to have that same empathy for you not wanting to know more. That makes sense?
Oh, sure. But I think the ones that say thank you for your service,
Uh-huh.
I think they get it. And I think most of them are sincere when they say it. They're not just saying it because it's the nicest thing to say. I think they actually believe it. And a lot of it, I think, has to be where they come from. Now, I'm out in a lot of the smaller towns, doing sports, doing basketball and volleyball, and I hear it more out there than anywhere else, because I think those folks get it. And you have some communities with veterans in them, with folks that live in these places that serve, so they get it because they were a part of it. It's just that a lot of the newer generation, with the advent of tech and AI and all that and all these different things, their options are different. Where I think it was more patriotic. When I look at the military today, it is so different than when we went
Right.
in. And I think the sentiment was totally different back then than it is today. So that's why they may not feel the need to want to do it. They're not as relatable to it because it's so different today than it was back when we went in there.
So let me throw another stat at you. Out of the 1% of veterans that serve in the military, 1/3 of that population are homeless. Another 1/3 of that population can't find a job. If America was supposed to be fulfilling its obligation to the service members, we're only talking 1%.
Yeah.
Less than 1% of a nation, of the whole nation, is actually serving this. And I just told you 2/3 are suffering. How can we, the fortunate ones, the ones that aren't in those positions, feel that the government actually fulfilled its obligation to the service member?
As a whole, no, because there's so much more that could be done and should be done. Because it makes no sense a country this size to have the problems we do, especially with our military personnel. It's like we went and put our lives on the line for this whole nation. So to me, just simply saying thank you for your service, because remember, that's a small part of the civilian population that says that. It's not all of them that say it.
True.
You don't have a majority. So the ones that do say it, I think they have an idea, but I think that goes to the leadership in Congress. They're the ones that control everything and have the ability to make things a whole lot better, but a lot of them just provide lip service because they may be up for re-election or something. So now I'm gonna go back and say this about the veterans or for the veterans, but after a period of time, it all fades away. Where we need the military, the folks that are veterans that serve in Congress, they need to be the ones to really step up because they can explain it better. And now they're in a position to make it better.
Right.
Veterans are not a priority until something bad goes on. That's when we become a priority. But there are too many issues that veterans that have served, that have gotten out, and having all of these difficulties. I almost think it should be mandatory that veterans are guaranteed jobs. Because if you think about it this way, if you weren't a veteran or you weren't serving, you would probably have a job in the civilian sector doing something and getting paid. But it's almost like you put yourself on hold. Granted, yeah, we are compensated, but you put maybe other aspirations on hold to take 3 years, 5 years, 20 years to go and do something else for this country, because all jobs aren't related to this country.
True.
So I think if they looked at it in that respect, you know what? It's like I think all veterans should be guaranteed not necessarily housing per se, but or the disabled veterans, it shouldn't even be broken up in all these different smaller percentages because of what you gave up. If you've broken up, if you've been wounded or whatever it is, they all should get 100% disability, in my estimation. And then that's still only a small drop in the bucket to the overall scheme of things. We all should be guaranteed some sort of housing. Because once again, if it's only 1% of a nation of gazillions, why not have that on the side to make sure we're taken care of? I didn't say everybody needs to live in a mansion, but there should be somewhere. I have a friend that's down in Tampa, Florida, and he's been struggling as a veteran.
Okay.
But he's in a position now where there's some they're giving him some form of housing, but that's still not enough because he's still dealing with a lot of different issues, and all they're not. Now this current administration wanting to cut back on services, even the veterans. That makes no sense to me. And a lot of these people doesn't or didn't have any members of their family serve. So it's easy for them to say that because they hadn't suffered a loss. Everybody else has gone and suffered, but their family hasn't suffered because they're still making their money because some of them are super rich. And I always think in my mind that if all these super rich people would just come together, ones with billions, it's far more money than you'll ever need to survive on. Why don't you donate some of your money and try to help veterans out? People talk it, but a lot of them aren't walking.
Okay. I'll receive all of that and say amen. But you know that are you total 100% disabled? Are you?
No, no.
Okay. So you served 21 years in the military, and as you said, you in your estimation, most veterans, if not all, should be guaranteed some type of something. Um, as the current state is right now, we're guaranteed a whole lot of nothing. What we're guaranteed is there's benefits out there.
Yes.
Over doing this podcast, I've learned a lot. Every time I talk to somebody, I learn about something that I didn't know, which is great. But the problem, I think, is that there's some things out there, but a lot of them are, like you said, they're a facade. You see a shiny building on the hill, everything looks perfect. The veterans are everything's good to go, and then when you look underneath it, it's just a stat. We did this, we did that, even though no, it's serving nobody or maybe one or two people a month. um I think that's a misnomer that we have, in the civilian society. Also, I think everybody thinks that the VA is the be all end all for every veteran, not understanding, and I talk about it inside my book as well, not understanding the bureaucracy that you have to go through to get
Oh, absolutely.
that 100% disability is a fight within itself. So are you evaluated right now? Do you have a rating on your disabilities, or do you have any?
No, I'm at 80 and
Okay.
in the process of, actually 2 weeks ago, I had a process to try to get an increase, but I was denied. And then I have something else that I'm dealing with, trying to just make it. But like you said, it is a struggle. And I'm thinking, how it's kind of crazy. How do you put a percentage on certain injuries compared to others? You know what I mean? How do you
Right.
how do you I know there's a formula that they use to determine all of this, but
True.
to me, if you've been injured to any degree that doesn't allow you to do a lot of the things you'd like to do, or you possibly would have been able to do, and it was due connected to the military, why not? Because in the grand scheme of things, the percentage, like you said, is so minuscule compared to money. I'm thinking the money we're spending on this, in my opinion, this war that shouldn't be going on because it hasn't made anyone's life any better. It actually made it worse by with the prices going up on every single thing that you have to pay for. If you were already struggling, you're struggling even more now because there are no services that's coming up. Well, saying we're going to try to offset your groceries this month by doing this. No, because Congress, first of all, didn't even weigh in on this thing. How do you
Right.
how do you go from a situation that was fine? I'm talking about when we go talk about the Strait of Hormuz, the ships were passing through, wasn't being taxed or wasn't being attacked, to now everything is on lockdown. So how is that helping benefit those of us that may already be struggling with trying to make ends meet? It's not.
Right.
And that's why things should be provided, especially for us that are in that situation. This country shouldn't have a homeless problem, whether it's veterans or anyone. It's too large. It's too large. That's why you look at some of these smaller countries, they're doing the right thing. And I think a lot of it has to do with our leadership. You're not doing, the people who we send to Congress are not doing what they were sent there to do. And me as a leader, when I think of leadership and what I did in the military, my soldiers came before anything. I always put myself at the back. And that's why I felt I was born to lead them, because not everybody leads the same way. I mean, some of my leadership didn't look at it that way. But in my mind, I had to be different. I was a different kind of cat. You know, my
Right.
troops, I made sure they all achieved the rank of at least E5 before I left them, or they went on. And then, the biggest thrill for me was not uplifting myself, but getting them to a different level where they could achieve more and attain more. And the fact that some of my soldiers retired as sergeants majors, or one of them is now an SGS. All of that is what made me proud, because
Right.
why, I had a hand in them. I helped them get to a certain point. And that's where I think this country, that's what I'm saying, education, that's where we're still falling short. Because you and I, we shouldn't have to struggle. I mean, you gave up 20 some years of your life to do the same thing. Why is it a struggle now that you're no longer doing that? It's like they didn't put you out the pasture, kind of sort.
So
Because first it's
how do
struggle.
we help you get, let's just talk about you specifically. How do we help you get through this system of the VA, regardless of what your MOS was, regardless if you were injured in combat or you were injured doing ruck marches or
Mhm.
running PT, regardless of what that system injured you during the process of your 21 years. How do we take care of Darryl? Because if we can take care of Darryl, then we can take care of Joey and Susie and everybody else that serves. What do we need to do to make that process better?
I think you got to streamline. I mean, if you look at, like you said, going a lot of times to the VA is like pulling teeth. Number one, it if the nation would flip it around and add like more doctors, it's kind of crazy because it still takes sometimes 6 months. You know, I have a biannual uh, checkups with the VA. I have civilian insurance as well, because for the more serious things that's with me, I go them because I can get it a lot faster. We have to find a way to make the system work for the veterans than work against them. And I don't
Right.
know if they need to hire more doctors or whatever it is, because in many cases, especially like in here in Houston, there's a ginormous medical center, man, but that place is overrun all the time. Fortunately, I don't have to go to the big clinic, the hospital all the time. I have a local clinic and they kind of get things done for me, and I appreciate that. But there's so many people, you know, I'm more, well, I don't have like the mental issue with a lot of folks do. Mine are more physical. But there is no difference, like you said, between whether I was in combat or whatever, because if I was airborne, which I'm not, but I was at the home of the airborne, and they had you doing things that just like everybody else did, and sometimes you got injured doing them. So that
Right.
injury, no matter, it wasn't in a combat situation, but it's still an injury.
Right.
And we have to find a way with serious people, number one, that really want it. And I would call on retired, was it sergeant major, flag officers, people that have actual juice. They should be the ones lobbying on Capitol Hill for better things uh for veterans. Even though we know there are people that are actually out there doing it, but you need some heavy hitters and to go in and just kind of flip the system to make it where we don't have all these issues. Why not build veteran housing? Texas is so large, there's always space somewhere, right? So,
Mm.
in my mind, why not build a facility specifically for homeless veterans so we can get them off the street? and find something for them to do so they can still feel like they're contributing to society. You know, if you're providing meals for them, a place to stay, essentially that's what the military did for us. We didn't have to worry about our clothing, where we're going to eat, where we're going to lay our head, because we already knew that. Brothers and sisters that are out there on the street right now, and the numbers aren't in the millions,
Right.
or it could be, but I don't think so. You know, in whatever city it is, there should be somewhere that those folks should be able to do it. And
If we can
that's my and
start,
that's where the country I think is falling short.
if we could start with the homelessness, just focus on that for a minute. If we could start with the homelessness and we could take all the veterans that are homeless off the streets, that would cut that homeless population down dramatically.
I would think so.
The thing I talk about in my book is there's systems out there. There's people that are doing the work that you're talking about. There's people that are out there that are doing if they find out you're a veteran, if you can prove it, you automatically get a house or a bunk. You know what I'm saying? Um, but these new generation of people that are in the military right now that will become veterans, I think that there's there's got to be a change. You know, we had a change from the time when the Vietnam veterans came back, you know, the way they were treated to the way we are treated. And now we need to evolve again. And it needs to change again so that it's better for the next generation behind us to transition, because the results are still going to be the same. That service member, regardless of what their MOS is going to come out different than when they went in.
Absolutely.
So that's something that I think we need to, we as the, we as America need to address and add to this conversation of thank you for your service, because you're thanking me, but you're not fulfilling that
Right.
thankfulness, you know? So that's kind of what this book is based off of.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talk about veterans coming out and being homeless. We talk about veterans coming out and the struggles that they have to go um, through
See
getting job
doctors.
placement.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about the things that they go through, just transitioning their job skills in the military to a civilian resume is a challenge, you
Yes, it
know?
is.
So that's all the things that we talk, well, we a lot more we talk about inside the book, but I think that you bring a different perspective because of your background in the military and your background outside of the military. For you, the transition was, I'm going to work, you know? For other veterans, the transition is night and day. But even you having the subtle transition, still understand that there's a bigger picture out there, and that being the label of a veteran doesn't end when the uniform comes off.
Correct.
There's there or when it was on. What it is it ends when we do and fulfill the obligation that America made to us. We filled our obligation. If it was
Yes.
2 years or 21 years or 27 years, we fulfilled our obligation. The question is, how do we get you, America, to fulfill yours? So I mean, this conversation is again different, but the same. Um, like I told you, we start the conversation and we go a little bit deeper. So we're about as deep as we need to get right now. Um, my question to you now is, saying that you were a leader and that your goal was to always take care of your soldiers. Um, now you said you're still a leader, and that's admirable. Okay, but you're leading a different set of people
Mm-hmm.
now, not servicemen. What would you want one of your coworkers to take from the leadership that you're trying to provide for them now?
That I've never put myself above anyone, and I always try to look out for their benefit or try to help. You know, part of what I do now in my basketball chapter is I'm one of the assigners. So I try to find the right niche for people, or just try to help them because I've seen a lot and I've done a lot, but sometimes people don't know how to get to where they're trying to go. And now it's all about training. You know, I try when we do our training, I try to make sure we do it right because it'll show up when you go out there on the court. As you know, if you're not trained properly, you have no clue what you're doing. So I try to take that added leadership role in my organization and try to ensure and I have open communication. Like I have folks calling me all hours of the night with questions about anything. So I try to make sure that I'm G to G and I can help them. If not, what am I there for? And I'm at an age now where I'm considered almost over the hill when you got these younger cats. And it's the same way I look at the military these days. If America doesn't fix what the issue is, our numbers are going to go down, and people are not going to want to even join the military anymore
Right.
because they see, well, I see these people all the time, and the way they're being treated, I'm not putting myself through that. You know, it's not important to serve the country. The Bible wants us, God wants us to serve people. And that's what I try. I want to serve. I enjoy serving. You know, I don't need to be served because I'm good. But I need to try to help those that that are, I always say, less fortunate than I. And especially my brothers and sisters, when I hear that somebody's like military, I'm honing it in. I'm trying to, okay, what can I do to try to help this person out? And that's what the country as a whole, I think years, maybe decades ago, we may have had that, but somewhere it got lost in the shuffle. You
Right.
know, we need to reclaim it and make it happen because we have the ability. I mean, we're spending billions and billions on a weekly basis. You know what 1 billion could do to help all the veterans out there? Just one, not the ones that we're firing off ammunition, and we have to keep re restocking.
Right.
Well, if you don't fire some of that ammunition and divert some of that money to the people, that's one thing I always loved about the Air Force. Even though I'm a soldier, they looked out for their people. They
Right.
always took care of their people. And that's what I wish America had the attitude to do for all military personnel, not only just soldiers, but all military personnel, is to just look out for them. And that's the biggest thank you they could ever say to us. You know what? We appreciate what you did, and this is what we're going to do for you. You got a guaranteed job when you come out, no matter where it is, you'll be guaranteed a job. You'll be guaranteed housing somewhere and try to help your family. If they would do that, I guarantee you'd have a lot more people that would still want to go into the service. And that's a guarantee to me that we should make. And it may not even cost on average, if you look at over the span of the time that they serve, it may not even cost $1 million per person.
Right.
And that's the investment that we need to make in our military personnel and just own up to it. We own up to everything else.
I am going to I'm going to say before I let you close us out with the final question of, my final question for you. I'm going to say this conversation with you has been um, eye-opening from a different point of view. Um, I think we went places that you probably didn't think this conversation was going to go, but that's good. That's good because it's authentic. Um, but hearing your perspective and coming from a whole different realm, because I'm combat arms, and I have that vision of I want this and I'm willing to fight for it. But then there's another side of the story, and your side of the story is totally opposite of mine. So, but we're still willing to fight for that same end result. And that just puts that camaraderie ship even more in depth embedded inside of me. So I want to say thank you. And before we close out, closing words for you, what do you want people to take from this podcast that you think they may be able to get some type of benefit from in their lives or their future, be it civilian or military, regardless? Um, what would you leave them with in your own words?
I would like them to just believe in themselves even more and never give up the fight, because the fight is only over when you're no longer here. So as long as you have the ability to fight for what you've earned and what you believe in, to continue to do that. And hopefully, just if you can take anything from what I said, just believe that. Just go ahead and fight for your right, because you've earned it. And and our other brothers and sisters, I hope that you will continue to fight for all of us, that the system that we're under will eventually work itself out, and everybody will be better off in them.
Well, Mr. Darryl Leonard, it was a pleasure to meet you, sir. The conversation that we had was top notch, and I appreciate your time and patience. And hey, we want to keep in touch. If any reason you decide you want to read my book, you can find it at mparkerbooks.com. That's my website. And the pleasure has been mine, sir. And thank you for your service. We appreciate you.
And thank you for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that was another episode of Beyond the Thank You. Hope you got something from it. I definitely did. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Have a blessed day.